Welcome. Today we're at Suffolk Water Park on the big lake. There's quite a few lakes on Complex, but we've got 48 hours in swim 34. It's quite a good swim. I've had quite a few fish here before. With the weather dropping a little bit, I kind of predict the fish are going to kind of stack up in this end. In this session, if I need to go long, I will, but I'm probably going to start off, I reckon, about 29-30 wraps to start off with, and obviously keep our eyes peeled, see what we can see. So yeah, 48 hours, let's see what we can have. So just having a few casts out there at the moment. That's quite a stiff crosswind. So what I might have to do is, although I want to fish at about 30 wraps, I'm probably distance-wise only hitting about 26 with that crosswind. So I might have to re-clip up. But it seems like there's not much weed out there at the moment. Some of the swims further down the shallows are starting to get quite a bit of weed in them. What you do have to be careful for in these swims is the mussels. There is quite a few mussel beds out there. So I'd kind of recommend, if you're fishing at distance anyway, you should be using shock leaders, but even more so important because of those mussels. Another thing I tend not to do in these swims, in kind of 33, 34 and 35, is I don't really back lead again because of those mussels. You don't really want your line laying right in them. Another kind of tip as well is, if you can dump the lead in these swims, try and do it. It just means when you are getting those pickups with the fish, they're coming up in the water a lot quicker. With them coming up in the water, there's less chance of them cutting you off. So hopefully we can find a nice spot out there. Ideally what I want to do is put all 3 rods on the one spot. And we'll see how we go from there. So a little bit about the bait. I've spent quite a lot of time on this lake this winter, and my baiting approach slightly changed this year. I used a lot of sweet corn, and I doused a lot of Baileys in that. With regards to the bream, I probably didn't have as many breams as I was expecting to start with. The reason for using the sweet corn was just because it doesn't get used an awful lot down here. I think quite rightly people are worried about the bream and pulling in the bream. So I used that for most of my winter campaign on it. What I'm now going to do is it's about this time of year that I'll change and go very much boilies only, some tigers in there as well. But I'll probably drop some of the particles, definitely drop the sweet corn, just because those bream are very, very active now. They're kind of going around the lake, and I think they'll home in a lot on that sweet corn. So with regards to boilies, I'm quite privileged that Bait Monkey supplied me with quite a lot of bait over the year. They've got 2 ranges. Their 2 predominant ranges of bait are the Chunky Monkey, which is this one here. So it's kind of a pale brown colour. Predominantly that's kind of a sweet nutty based bait. And then what they do as well is the Antarctic Monkey, which is like a krill fish meal based bait. Last year I had quite a lot of success actually mixing the 2. So most of my mixes incorporated both the fish meal and the Chunky Monkey, kind of mixed in all as one. What I then try and do is I try and change the sizes a little bit, so have a mixture of dumbbells, some 15s, some 18s, just give the fish something a little bit different out there. I don't know whether it's improved the catch rate. What it definitely hasn't done is it hasn't hindered it. And I think sometimes some of the fish in here can be a little bit picky about what they pick up. So if you can give them a mixture, it's not bad. So what I'll probably do is, usually when I get here, I'll prepare at least a bucket's worth of bait. I might not use all of that, but at least it's there and it's kind of all prepared and done. So I'll probably put in about 3-ish kilos of that one. I try and do equal. Another thing I like to put in with the mix as well is some kind of oil based. Because of the bream in here, I tend to shy away a little bit from any of the fish oils or the hemp oil. My go-to for the last couple of years has been like a tiger nut oil, so something that's quite sweet. The other good thing is they're winterized baits, a lot of the tiger oils as well, so you can use them throughout the whole year. So another, when I first kind of got introduced to Bait Monkey, I had a look. They were actually down here and they were doing a charity stall for a charity match. And I got chatting to Dean from Bait Monkey, and he kind of gave some of them to me, and they are so soft. These are shelf life, but actually they don't feel like a shelf life. They feel very much like a freezer bait. It can cause its own issues. With a throwing stick, they can split very easy, so trying to get these at a distance with a throwing stick, you're probably going to be better off spomming them. I have stuck them in an air dry bag before, especially going to France for quite a while. That does harden them up a little bit. But yeah, and then what I kind of do is over the top, I try and muck around with colours a little bit, but I've said to a lot of people in the past, don't get too het up about what colour you're using, what colour's working. Over the last few years, I've used whites, pinks, yellows, kind of the match the hatch kind of colours as well. They all work in here. The fish, it's not so much about the colours and the attraction. These fish are very old. They will get their heads down on a bed of bait, and I think if your bait's positioned in the right spot, and I'll talk a little bit later about how I actually bait up and how I get the swim kind of going. So I will talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, don't be too worried about colours. It's more for your own. I think it gets in the angler's head a lot of the time. It definitely does with me. I was doing really well at the early part of the year on whites, so I've stayed on whites. It's just a confidence thing. So yeah, let's get some of this mixed up and let's spot some out there. So getting a little bit of bait out, what I have been doing is I put a few tigers in with the mix as well. I probably don't use so much tigers in the winter time, but this time of year the carp do like them. Hopefully the bream lay off of them a little bit as well. So put those in the mix. What I'm then going to do is I'll fish all 3 rods at 30 wraps. So if I see something during the session, I might change that a little bit, but my go-to is to put those 3 rods on the 30 wrap mark. There is a little bit of a crosswind at the moment, but that crosswind's going to be the same for the spodding and for putting the rigs out as well. So I'm not too worried. What I tend to do, which is probably a little bit different to what a lot of people do, is my spom is actually clipped up half a wrap further than what my rigs and leading rods are. The reason for that is I kind of like to have a big bed of bait out there with the fish feeding on that baited area, and then my rigs are actually on the front of that, so they're not actually in the baited area. And I think that's why some of the hits of fish I've had, I think the fish feel comfortable on those big beds of bait, and they're literally a few of them coming off to the edge, picking up my hook bait. I'm then hooking and landing those fish, and the feeding carp are still on that same spot as well. That's resulted in I've had double takes and triple takes on this lake, and then even putting the rods back out again, they've gone again. So those carp don't tend to spook as much. You don't run the risk of any line being through that baited area as well. So again, another reason why the fish might not spook so much. So yeah, we'll get some more bait out there and then try and get 3 rods on there. So I'll go into a little bit more detail a little bit later on about rigs, mechanics and kind of what I use in what situation at the water park. But predominantly at the moment I'm going to be going with 3 Ronnies, all on a 4-ounce lead with white Chunky Monkey pop-ups. We'll do that to start with and we'll see what happens. But I will talk a little bit. I get a lot of questions about what rig's the best rig on here. Again, don't overcomplicate it. Bit like the bait colours, keep it fit, keep it simple, and use what you're confident in. But yeah, let's throw 3 of these out there and we'll see what happens. So the rods are out. Time's getting on now. It's about 6 o'clock now. We didn't get in the swim till 3 o'clock. By the time we kind of set the rods up, got a bit of bait out there. That's nearly the end of today. The positive is there is a lot of fish in, not necessarily in this swim, but in 35, the back of the bay. But the fish are out there. Generally, they have a habit of moving out late in the evening as well. So I think we're in prime position to maybe intercept 1 or 2. So hopefully we'll have a nice evening, got a beer. We'll see what tonight brings and hopefully we'll have one for you by the morning. So early this morning we got another one in the retainer, and this one they kind of went about 20-30 minutes apart, so that's a good sign. They moved slightly out of the bay. The first fish come on my right hand rod, and then this one on the left hand rod. Tension tonight as well, but yeah, not a bad way to start the morning. So here's the second fish. This one's slightly bigger at 23 pound, but definitely a good sign. Today we'll go in a little bit more in depth into kind of rigs, a bit more on bait and approach, and kind of how I approach the swim when I first arrive on a session. So yeah, hopefully today we can have a few more fish, and we'll have a little bit more of a chat about how I can nick a few more. So, a little bit about the rigs I'm using. Predominantly, I only really use 2 types of rigs at the water park. One's your standard Ronnie rig. I do tend to over putty there. I'm not one for critically balancing this time of year on this lake. Obviously I would if the situation was I'm fishing over silkweed or something like that, then yeah, critically balance them, but I don't think if you're fishing over a clear area, at the water park. There's no need, just over putty them. I quite like the fact as well that hook point sometimes can almost catch the fish just with the putty, and that's enough for them to then bolt off, and then the lead engages, and you get quite a good hook hold. So yeah, Ronnie, new hooks I've been using this year. These are the Corda spinner hooks. I think these are in size 5, so they're really good. They're a little bit aggressive, but I've fished with these for, like I say, last year now, and they're pretty good. They're also, the other good thing about the Ronnie as well is if you're fishing at those kind of mega distances, they're a lot less prone to tangling. So I'll show you the other rig, which is what I've had quite a lot of success on over the last 4 years at the water park, and it is a basic hair rig. There's nothing to it really, just a kicker, a little bit of silicone half the way down the shank, fairly short, and it's kind of semi-stiff this, so it shouldn't tangle too much. That's quite good, and I fished that with those, like the barrel wafters. What I have done is, in the past, I've had some really good sessions on the water park, which has included multiple hits of fish. I think my record was a couple of years ago, I had 71 fish in a week. And that's fishing very much, my style of fishing is very similar to a carp match angler. So I will build the swim, I will feed a lot of bait, I will spot after every single fish. I'll do that no matter what time of day or night it is as well. Even when some people look and go, they wouldn't necessarily spawn at bite time, like first thing in the morning, I will. If I've had 2 or 3 fish, all the rods are out of the water, I will keep introducing that bait and just keep trickling it in. And I'll probably throughout the day put in another few spods as well, just to keep that swim going. But to have those hits of fish, you do need to be very prepared. And at the water park, that can happen in a lot of the swims on here. So you can have those multiple hits, but you need to kind of act quite fast. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a fish in the net, before I've even sorted that fish out. I will then literally put another 5-6 spawns over the top, get that rig done, get the rod back clipped up, and get that right back out on the spot, and then sort that fish out. So rig wise, this is fairly common for me to have kind of 40 pre-tied rigs all ready to go, and that's the same with the Ronnies and the wafter rigs as well. So my rig boards are normally pretty packed, just because you can have those sessions, and it doesn't always last. Sometimes the window of those sessions is 4 or 5 hours, so it might be that you can have 14-15 fish in those few hours and then it dies a little bit, so you need to make the most of that time. With some of those big hits, a lot of people have asked about, over the past, they've kind of said what swims are good for those big hits of fish. Anything, if you know the water park well, anything in that big bowl area is very good for getting big hits of holding fish. And at certain times of year, it's a very good area. I'd say in the summer, it's probably not the best because the weed does concentrate a lot down the shallow arm, and as soon as that weed comes up, that's full of naturals. The fish migrate down to that end of the lake, so this bowl area doesn't see as much action. So yeah, this is the same for winter as well. Don't think necessarily at the water park that you can't have those big hits of fish and keep feeding them in the winter. I think January and February I had quite a few sessions where I had 20-30 fish, and that was in very cold minus conditions. I was still putting the bait in, still fishing it the same as what I do throughout the rest of the year. So that's a little bit of how I approach the sessions, and do that in the session. So what I'm going to do now is I'll get the rods redone. Haven't had anything this morning yet, they're still showing out there, so I'll probably recast those rods, get them back out there, trickle a little bit more bait in, and we'll see what happens. Today's been pretty uneventful, not much showing out there, not like they were first thing this morning and late yesterday evening. Hopefully we can see a few going into this evening. It's now 4:30, 5ish, so yeah, hopefully we'll see what tonight brings. If the bite times are quite short at the moment, which they could be because of the cold weather, then hopefully we can have another couple at least in the morning. So let's get the rods out there. This little fella came just as the sun came up this morning. Lost one last night at midnight as well. That was only on for probably 15 seconds and then the hook pulled. This one came though at sunrise on the same rod as well that I put back out at midnight. So although 3 rods are on the one spot, that seemed to be that the right hand rod is the one producing at the moment. So still got another couple of hours to go, so might be able to nick one more. I'm not hopeful. The sun's kind of shining most of today, so we'll see. We might be able to nick one more just before we go home, but let's get this one back. He's a little bit angry, so yeah, but not nice looking little common. So session's coming to an end now. In the end, 3 fish, landed. I lost one, that one last night, but that's kind of the way it is. So yeah, 48 hours. It's not a bad return. I'm always self-critical anyway after a session, but I think to have landed 3, the lake's fishing really hard at the moment. I don't think there's been many out this weekend. As is typical with this lake, when it sees a lot of pressure, it does shut off a little bit, so weekends are a lot more difficult to fish than midweek. So that's another tip if you're coming down here. If you can get away with doing midweek sessions, especially quick overnighters, generally you do have a lot more fish. So yeah, just about to reel in now, head home. That's been enjoyable. I think if I was to do this session again, I'd probably fish it a little bit shorter. The reason being, I don't think I was as accurate as I could have been with the wind trying to fish at that distance. So yeah, one of the things I might change is I probably didn't need to be fishing at that length. But yeah, every session is a learning curve. So yeah, about to head home. Catch you on the bank soon. Thank you for watching, and a huge shout out to Alex as well, who's come down and filmed this. So brilliant. Catch you soon.